Again, thank you very much, Michael and Victoria, obviously, for inviting me to be part of this show, which was a great experience, even though, unfortunately, the show wasn't open for very long in person. And also to Jessica and Catherine for inviting me today to this coffee conversation, which is not always going to be as fun as the last one we did, where we actually did have coffee and cake after. But we still can have our coffee and I guess in the comfort of our own home. So thank you all. So just to start out with, I'm going to just show a couple of the installation images because I'm not 100% sure whether many of you got a chance to actually go in and see the show. The window of it being open was quite limited, but at least it was open for a little while. So this is the installation that I had in Blazing World in the World That Ends show. It's made up of video, a sculpture, and a photograph, which is stuck between the wall and the floor. And here's another image of it, so you get a sense of the scale of the work to the room. So I just want to spend some time now just talking a little bit about the background to the work and the ideas behind it, and then actually specifically go into talking about the work itself. My plan is to show part of the video at the end and then take questions. So the video takes a good 10 minutes. So hopefully it'll pass quickly though for you. Okay, so the work that I made for World That Ends is about Svalbard. And Svalbard is an island in the Arctic, which has a population of just over 2,500, with actually 52 different nationalities. So I was really thinking about it as a place where you could live. It's a place also that you can live and work without a visa. Because of the Svalbard Treaty, which was set in 1920, it allows anybody who signed the treaty to live and work there, which sounds very utopic, and that's what really brought me to be interested in Svalbard. But of course, it's utopic until you actually get there and realize it is in the Arctic. Nothing grows there. It's dark for 6 months of the year and bright for 6 months of the rest of the year. And very, very isolated. Everything needs to be brought in and brought out of the island. So for decades, this Svalbard Treaty was considered useful, if not a bit of an idiosyncratic compromise to what was going to happen to a place like Svalbard that was never claimed, had no indigenous population, and was what was considered a terrace nullis. The treaty that was drafted in 1920 was before any of the maritime laws came into being. And indeed, that has now some repercussions. And the repercussions because of things like, for example, the snow crab, which would guarantee everybody signed the treaty, the ability to fish for the snow crab, but Norway has blocked that because the snow crab is considered to be a mineral resource. So there's certain things that are happening now around this island that are going to start people making territories look at this this treaty again, and whether or not it's still relevant, given that the laws have changed, maritime laws have changed. And also, given the vast stretches of land that are attached to Svalbard. In my last coffee conversation, we talked about territories having the ability to mine 25 miles from the land. And this, of course, is something that is of interest to anybody who has a stake in Svalbard, because you have access to the mineral resources like the oil and ores that are deposited up in the Arctic. So, the question is whether or not there will be a territorial struggle over Svalbard in the future, and some politicians and international relations people are considering that there will be. It's just too rich of a resource for the treaty to remain as it currently is. So that brought me to Svalbard. And let's hope now the slides are going to turn. Let's go again. This is where always the technology. Yes, so this is a picture of Margaret Cavendish, and she wrote this book called Blazing Worlds, and it's actually considered to be the first science fiction proto-feminist book. But in this particular book, the protagonist is captured and ends up in the Arctic, in the North Pole, and where she discovers everybody else dies, obviously, and she's left in this position where she discovers this entrance to another world. And she goes into this other world where she lives and reigns as queen, emperor, and lives eternal. But she has the power to travel mentally. So the whole story is a little bit crazy, but very, very interesting for many, many reasons, including its issue of gender, where she's really looking at gender as in a very broad way, I have to say. So I was reading this book as well at the same time, thinking about science fiction and the notions of other worlds. And Svalbard came into mind because, you know, this idea of a other world that Margaret Cavendish goes into is not unknown. There are lots of, let me say, histories, myths around the hollow earth theory. So the hollow earth theory is basically that there's an entrance at the North and South Pole into another world. And in this other world, there's another sun. There are different people, very similar to humans, but seemingly taller, and they have better use of technology. That's so far the theories of hollow world. But the idea of hollow earth actually came originally from Halley, Edmund Halley, who you might know from Halley's Comet. So he was predicting that this place existed and had a whole theory around it. And a lot of the European myths come from Halley's, let's say, prophecies or philosophical thoughts around hollow earth. This led actually Hitler to go look for it. You know, so he sent at least 2 expeditions out to look for hollow earth. And clearly none that we know of were successful, but the myth carries on because there is the myth that actually Hitler and some of the Nazi party managed to find the entrance to hollow earth and are currently living there. So it's a myth that, you know, one of these kind of myths that keeps on giving. There is a group of hollow earthers where the group headquarters is in Canada. So it's a myth that's still alive and kicking. However, one would think that if there was an entrance the size that is discussed by Halley in the North and South Pole, it would probably have been discovered by now. But anyway, the myth lives on. And in fact, this is a man called General Byrne. He was in the US Air Force, and he said in World War II that he flew into hollow earth and met the people there, and they had wonderful technology. They were very friendly. They were very much like humans, but much taller. And they had a message for us, which was they didn't like the atomic bomb, and they were worried about where we were going with our technology. And he came back. There was a whole inquiry with the US Air Force, as you can imagine, and his diaries have been taken where he discusses this. So, you know, who knows? There's a lot of conspiracy about did he really fly in there or where did he really go? So I just thought I would put him up there to show you there's a lot of the myth is based around his visit to hollow earth, and then the subsequent missions that he was sent on to refine the entrance in the South Pole, which was never successful. Okay, so that was a lot of the thinking around it. And, you know, this brings me to She. So one of the most best-selling books in the world is a book called She. And I'm not sure if many of you heard of it, because I was rather surprised to find that it was in the top 10 best-selling books of all time, which was rather surprising to me. So it's She, A History of Adventure. And again, it is some explorers find the entrance into Hollow Earth, which is ruled by this queen. And there are many versions of this movie, actually. There's at least 5 versions that I've been able to find. And one of the versions, one of the first versions, has, which is silent, actually has the first, some of the first examples of special effects. And indeed of a woman being naked completely on camera, which was quite shocking at the time. So the myth has appeared a lot in films, and it's something that really has triggered the imagination. So when I went there, the first time I went there, this is kind of what I saw. It was like this. This was midday. So, you know, it is dark. You can see the children's school ground in the background. You know, that's where they were going out of the break time to play. And it's, you know, as a utopic place to live, it wouldn't be up there for me, let's put it like that. But it has incredible beauty at the same time. What it's also very famous for is the Global Seed Bank. And again, we all hear wonderful things about the Global Seed Bank, but this is what it looks like. You literally, you know, it's kind of tiny because it's all underground. But I thought I'd show you that so you get a sense of what the place is like in the middle of winter. Svalbard was originally a mining town, so it really had traditionally a very large European settlement, and mostly Nordic and English, and miners also from Russia. So there's still the remnants of a Russian town there. So the island is filled with buildings like this. So buildings that were really about grading the coal, and buildings that were originally for the miners to live in. However, the mines have mostly closed down now. It's too expensive to mine there, and it was just becoming also dangerous. So, for example, there was a big mining disaster in the Russian town, and the Russian town there has been left abandoned. So you can go and visit that and see the old school where the children's posters are still up in the classroom. It's like really this abandoned site, which is really quite interesting. The building at the forefront is actually the governor's building. So the governor, you know, monitors clearly the running of the island, which nowadays is mostly really tourism. And also the governor's job is to make sure anybody who shouldn't be living there isn't living there. And really, anybody can live there, apart from people who cannot support themselves. So, you know, I asked there, well, what happens how do you know if somebody can't support themselves? He said, it's such a small place, you know if somebody can't support themselves. So they're then literally picked up and taken to an airplane and shipped out of the island. So there's no real service for you. You know, you can't be buried there. You can't, you know, most people don't live there more than 5 years. But some people do. I mean, there are some people who have lived there nearly their life there, coming on and off the island. Most of the population I met tended to live there for 6 months and then leave for 6 months. So it was very transitory lifestyle. So I'm showing you this picture because this was actually the old Nazi headquarters. And it was interesting enough, the news of the World War II ending did not reach Svalbard. So this was the last place where the Nazis actually surrendered. And that was 6 months after the war. So it's so isolated. They were there. I'd like to think that they were looking for Hollow Earth, but they weren't. They were doing meteorological research. So slightly different. And actually, you know, the island there has it's a good gateway for the marine vessels. So they were also looking out for Allied vessels and bombing them. When I was there also, I spent some time going into these ice caves. I was really trying to imagine the journey that the female protagonist in Blazing Worlds by Margaret Cavendish was having, this kind of journey through these ice caves into this other world. So this is an ice cave that's underneath the glacier, and you know, was really quite spectacular. Here is another image of the ice cave, and this is actually the image that's in the show, and it is you can see kind of, you know, the various layers of the ice in it, and yeah, I think not much more to say about that. And here is the sculpture that's in the show, and this is a piece of coal, and the reference to the Blazing Worlds and Hollow Earth is really this piece of coal, because in Blazing Worlds there is a stone that actually gives everlasting life, and in the She movies it's a fire actually, but in Blazing Worlds it's a stone. So this is kind of reference to fire and stone in both books, and the power of stones. And also, clearly, coal is very important to Svalbard. So this piece references a lot of this rebirth. References also that Svalbard completely survives on coal. So the entire town is heated and lit by coal energy, which, given it's running out, is going to be quite a challenge for them. And you know, ecologically already has, you know, is a challenge for all of us, what's happening up there. But this piece really references a lot of the politics around coal usage, but also around the myth that's in the work. I mean, myth making is all about you know, patterns and narrating a story. So I think this use of stone is quite interesting here. So as I said, the video is quite, first of all, the video is a video that never ends. So it's a coded narrative. So what does that mean? It means that it's made up of lots of different clips. So clips that I've shot, but also found footage clips. And these clips follow a structure that's laid out by me in a computer program. But the computer program reorganizes the clips within that structure. So I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but it's like you have, you know, different chapters of a book, and the computer code can go to any chapter in that book and pick any paragraph out of that chapter and put it together into a new book. So that's really what the coded narrative does. I was really also in the video trying to put together a narrative that did not have voiceover and wasn't explaining anything about Svalbard as a place, wasn't explaining anything about the politics behind the place, the fact that, you know, potentially the ecological issues that it had, which was something I was very interested in going there, but actually left the viewer to bring their own meaning to a lot of the footage, particularly with some of this footage, which would be very well known to us. So, you know, Ursula Andrews as playing She is an image that is very well recognized. And, you know, people can bring their own memories and their own experience of as a spectator to the work. So the video is also set in a kind of structure that is real until you get to a certain stage. And a certain stage is where the dogs start barking. When the dogs start barking, the video moves to a more mythical side of Svalbard. So the first part is kind of setting up the scene. It's showing some real shots of the place. The music that's used is considered the national anthem of Svalbard, which, interestingly enough, is actually from a movie of Svalbard. Svalbard appears in a lot of movies in myth form, but not in reality. So, for example, in The Golden Compass, it's set in Svalbard, but it's actually shot in Iceland. So you have this kind of weird situation of this place being real, but actually can only be made real in an imaginary way. So the music that's used is from a film, and the clips from the dogs onwards is kind of bringing you into this imaginary space of another world, of a Hollow Earth. And in the Hollow Earth She movies, the Queen replicates very much the behaviors of a patriarchal sovereignty, where she's very vicious. There isn't this, feminist ideal of what a matriarchal world would look like. So I think that's quite an interesting viewpoint. Again, it was written by a man, so slightly different to Margaret Cavendish's view of what was happening in her other world. But let me play the video, and we can take any questions on it after that.
This photograph was taken at the magnetic North Pole in Svalbard, where the ice bears.
There's two fundamental rules. You have to have a roof over your head and you have to be able to provide for yourself, so it follows. Everyone's got a job, no one's poor, so there's no stealing, and there's no crime. Everybody's always happy.
Is it possible that an other Earth can be located within the confines of our own planet? Historically, underground realms were not relegated to mere mythology. Since we have not actually drilled down far enough to confirm these findings, could it be that we may be wrong about the composition of our own Earth?
I want to believe it. Suppose it's true. Suppose it's true.
State. There have been reports that
Look! There's our way. What an unbelievable sight!
Is that not better than living on the surface? Mechanical men doing all the labor?
The Morenians lived underground. Now we have since the first ice age, 100,000 years ago.
it's magical. We are in a cave, you understand.
everything.
Stupid.
Like terror. My empire is of the imagination.
What a spectacle this will be.
Do you think I'm cruel for the sake of cruelty? Put that girl in chains.
We can never allow Urania to become desecrated by the presence of surface people. Our lives are serene. Our minds are superior. Our accomplishments greater.
Is your world so much better? Your world where men kill each other in their millions in the name of freedom?
Feast your eyes. He is from your world. We have none of that here.
Your world that has not long to live. A few decades only before it destroys itself. Then, what will be left?
The mad world of ours, it would be a living death, a suffering far greater than the destiny which awaits me here.
Okay, so there you can just see a short clip of it, but the point of the film is that you'll never actually see the same film ever. So if you stood in front of it for the next 10 years, you might see the same clips, but it'll never be in the same combination. So in a sense, the film never really ends. You know, that was really to tie in as well with the theme of the show. So I think on this note, I'll open up to questions because I'm just conscious of time.